One aircraft transformed the world.
Request permission to carry out a high-power ground run.
With 2 decks, carrying over 500 passengers. And wings the width of a football pitch. It was twice the size of any airliner before. The Boeing 747. Affectionately known as the Jumbo Jet.
Okay, going up on 1 and 4.
It's still an engineering marvel.
It's just awesome, the power of these things.
Now, as one 747, Victor Xray is stripped to its bare bones and given the biggest overhaul of its life, there's a rare opportunity to explore deep inside its hidden features.
Wow, this is pretty cramped. That is massive.
A 200-strong team of highly skilled engineers take on the challenge of checking over 20,000 parts of this mighty aircraft.
If we don't take that out now, that crack will just run and run and run.
Safety is paramount in this finely balanced machine. Every component, from its engines to its kettles, must be intricately examined for damage.
The amount of knowledge and experience we need to learn is just incredible.
I've got 3 children, they're very proud that Mummy works on airplanes.
Well, when you see it barreling down the runway as well, 140, 150 knots, you think, I did them bolts up.
And we'll reveal what happens to a Jumbo when it reaches the end of its working life. This is Engineering Giants.
I'm Rob Bell. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I've always loved to get my hands on complex machines to discover how they work.
I'm Tom Wrigglesworth, an electrical engineer with a passion for big machines. And this is Victor Xray, the 747 that's about to let us in to all its engineering secrets. This is the shortest flight this plane will no doubt ever do. It's flying just 132 miles, from Heathrow to Cardiff Airport.
And in a few moments' time, this is where the 747 will arrive. This enormous maintenance hangar. All planes are regularly maintained, but every 6 years, 747s come here for a complete overhaul. That means that they're stripped right down. Every part is meticulously checked before being reassembled and sent back out into service.
This is the first time that British Airways have allowed cameras to film the complete overhaul of one of their aircraft. And we'll be there for every critical stage in the engineering process.
This is a perfect opportunity for me and Rob to see deep within the Boeing 747 and appreciate how amazing these enormous machines are. So there's your aircraft coming now.
Victor Xray was the 1,172nd Jumbo to be manufactured by Boeing. It was delivered to the airline 14 years ago and has since flown 36 million miles, equivalent to 1,500 times around the world.
So we have the shutdown checks, please.
As Captain Doug Brown shuts down the engines and hands the plane over to the Cardiff engineering team, I've been offered a rare glimpse inside the flight deck. Hey Doug, thank you for letting me in here. This is
No problem.
Well, it's every boy's dream, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Every boy's dream. What is the least used or pressed switch?
To be honest, very few of them get used in flight. When the 747-400 was designed in 1989, it moved from being a 3-crew aeroplane with a flight engineer's panel there, which had thousands of buttons, dials and gauges, and a full-time flight engineer, to an automated 2-crew aeroplane with just 2 pilots.
So this is a simplified version?
This is, in some ways, yes, but what's going on behind the scenes is quite complex. The actual heart of the airplane is this flight management computer. And what that allows us to do is to program the airplane and the autopilot of the aircraft with a lot of the information before flight And then as we go through the flight, we're actually using the flight management computer to control the aircraft as much as anything else on the airplane.
In the case of raw flying, what's the minimum amount of controls you'd need?
In the absolute worst case, you can fly the aircraft using these three basic instruments here.
Okay.
Altimeter horizon, airspeed indicator and altimeter.
Okay.
I don't know of any case where a 747's got down to flying on those instruments. There is a huge amount of redundancy built into the airplane.
Now, it's time for the £200 million worth of 747 to be carefully towed into the maintenance hangar, where it will live for the next 5 weeks.
I always wondered what it'd be like to be part of the ground crew at Heathrow. I'm guessing getting a bit of a feel for it now. Handbrake on, good to go.
Now I can finally climb aboard through what is currently the only way in, a maintenance hatch in the belly of the plane.
Welcome aboard, BA Flight 319.
Thank you very much. How's the flight?
Excellent, thank you.
Oh, cheers.
Give you a hand. Here we are, first class.
It's pretty spacious up here.
Very spacious. Been sat in C1A.
How's the view from up there?
I'll show you.
Oh, that's the stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. This is 1A.
Reserved for the creme de la creme.
Absolutely.
Which makes this seat what?
Mick Jagger's girlfriend.
That'll do.
Now that Victor Xray is safely inside the hangar, the engineering team can begin the monumental task of stripping the jumbo back to its aluminium shell and forensically examining all of its critical parts for the smallest defect.
Because number one to us is safety. Safety, safety, safety. We are looking after people's lives here.
You can't make any mistakes. You gotta be right all the time. You know, there's no garages at 36,000 feet.
Over the next 5 weeks, engineers will work in teams within different areas of the plane, methodically searching for any signs of damage amongst Victor Xray's 6 million components.
One day we come into work and we'll be doing the cabin, which is very involved. There's all sorts of different disciplines of engineering that the cabin holds. And the next day we could be on the wing. The next day we could be doing the engine runs at the end of the check, which is pretty exciting.
This complex operation will take over 30,000 working hours, with the team having to complete 12,000 separate jobs.
We pretty much run 7 days, 24 hours.
General Manager Bill Kelly is in charge of the maintenance facility.
How many years would that be flying for?
Well, this aircraft could fly upwards of 25 years.
Really?
So, yeah, absolutely. Very robust, very reliable, strong aircraft. And when well maintained, as we do, they'll go on for many, many years yet.
Bill and his team are under massive pressure to finish Victor Xray's overhaul on time. On the same day it's due for completion, the jumbo is scheduled to fly passengers to South America. Delays can cost millions of pounds.
You know, you get something wrong in maintenance where it delays you by a day or 2 days, it can really start to impact the rest of your operation. So you need to be on the ball, you know.
Much of the work on Victor Xray's fuselage needs to be carried out at height. The tip of its tail fin is 20 meters above the ground, so the aircraft will be surrounded by this rig, designed by these engineers specifically to fit a 747.
It's not until you get right up close to the tail fin, like I am here now, that you get a sheer sense of scale for the whole thing. From the tip to the ground is almost 70 foot. And looking back along to the front of the aircraft is a perspective I've never seen before. It's seriously impressive.
The first big engineering challenge is to test one of the plane's heftiest components, the 18-wheeled landing gear. Locked into the scaffolding rig, the plane can't be propped up like a car, so its 180-ton weight is supported on 3 jumbo-sized jacks as the floor is lowered.
So I can see clear ground now between the wheels and the floor.
A failure of the mechanical systems that lower the landing gear could be disastrous. So this is the only occasion when engineers have the opportunity to check that the wheels can drop safely if the pilot has to rely on gravity.
Whoa, jeez. And here they come.
The landing gear weighs as much as a double-decker bus, so if it was simply allowed to fall down, it could potentially cause serious damage.
Just getting the front one done.
So its mechanisms are designed to offer enough resistance to control the speed of deployment.
So now they've dropped. The guys are just giving them a push to get them finally locked into place. If you were in air and you had to do that, the pilot would just kind of swing the plane a bit and get them to swing out and lock. And for the back gears there, the air pressure that's flowing past it would lock those back into place. What are these two plates at the top here?
Well, on the nose wheel, you've got no brakes.
Okay.
So when the aircraft takes off, the wheels are spinning pretty fast. So those are basically big scuff plates. The tyres will hit them, and it just slows them down and stops them.
Okay, okay.
Inside Victor Xray, the cabin team are preparing to strip out all the seats. Melanie Gedders and Janice Nash are among a growing number of female engineers working at the facility.
You say you work for British Airways, everybody knows the label, the brand, and they assume that you're cabin crew, you know? They don't naturally assume that you work in engineering. So it's something to be proud of. I've got 3 children, they're very proud that Mummy works on airplanes and fixes airplanes, so that's definitely one to tell the kids.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you go home from work one day and all your friends saying about being stuck in the office, and then you go and say, I've been walking the wing today, and they're like, wow, it's great.
Through rigorous training, engineers must learn every facet of the 747. Stan Williams first worked on the Jumbo 19 years ago, and flying on one has never been the same since.
I'm listening for everything.
You listen out.
You can't help it. I wish I didn't. Sometimes I'll put headphones on because you don't want to hear. There's lots of noises, different noises that go on an aircraft when it's in flight. And but you can't help it. It's in our blood, if you like.
Before everything disappears from the cabin,
This is the CSD's office.
cabin crew member Becky Wadsworth has agreed to reveal some aspects of working on a 747. She spent over 10,000 hours in the air on planes like Victor Xray, where space is extremely tight.
Meals, these are the ovens.
These are the ovens? OK.
Yeah.
On an average flight, Becky and her team will serve 300 passengers over a ton of food and drinks. Is it true that when there's 2 pilots on board, they have to have a different meal?
That's absolutely. So, you know, should there be something wrong with the chicken, for example, then you don't want them both coming down ill with the same things.
And it's those little flashpoints that, I mean, who decides first?
It's normally the captain.
Captain first, co-pilot gets what's left.
Absolutely. I mean, the captain will often say, you choose first.
Oh, what a lovely English tradition. A 14-hour flight in cramped conditions is hard work.
Well, you would hope that they would discuss it.
So today's 747 crews are able to use a secret compartment above the passengers' heads.
At the stairs here is the crew rest area.
Space is of a premium, isn't it, up here?
Absolutely. Cosy.
Oh, wow. So what's the longest flight you do?
It's about sort of 14 hours from Singapore.
And in that time, then, how long would you get to spend enjoying this luxury?
You'd get about, yeah, sort of 3.5 hours rest.
So I think what you also should have is a little button to call a member of the public up to help.
Back down in the cabin, the next test is on a critical safety component that airlines hope their passengers will never see.
Go on. Whoa! That was impressive.
Failure of the chutes is not an option. With lives depending on them, they must inflate within seconds and stay inflated. So all 12 chutes are sent to the interiors workshop for rigorous testing.
Wow, it's huge.
Here, specially trained engineers like Michael Wake ensure that the slides are leak-free and inflate at incredibly high speeds.
Basically, they've got to open up within a certain time limit,
Okay.
which on these particular unit is 3 seconds.
Okay, so what's the process behind inflating one of these rafts?
The door open,
Yep.
and then the cylinder then charges 300 psi.
And that's this here?
Yeah.
There's a huge technical challenge with the inflation of such a large device. To inflate something the size of an aircraft life jacket, a small canister can provide enough air. But the same system would require a 3-metre-long canister on an escape chute. So instead, when triggered, the canister of compressed carbon dioxide and nitrogen delivers only an initial boost. The clever technique is that these gases are forced through a narrow gap, which causes them to accelerate rapidly. This acceleration creates a vacuum that then sucks in enough ambient air to inflate the entire slide in 3 seconds.
That was pretty quick.
Yep.
3 seconds, we happy with that?
Yep.
Wow. And look at it, I mean, it's
Solid there.
absolutely solid.
Testing the escape chute is the easy part. Now, like a parachute, the 30 square meters of material must be folded precisely back into its container, measuring just half a square meter.
And typically that'll take how long?
6 hours of hard labour.
Wow.
It's as much an art as science. It's all too easy to take flying for granted. As passengers, we're oblivious to the fact that the enormous metal tube we're travelling in is flying through the air at close to 600 miles an hour, and at a height similar to Everest, an atmosphere unable to support life. Engineer Gavin Beverstock is showing me how Victor Xray pumps air from its engines into the cabin to create an atmospheric pressure similar to conditions on the ground.
Due to rise in altitude means a decrease in pressure, but also due to comfort for passengers. It has to be maintained, because obviously when we're on the ground we're at 14.7 psi, and as you're rising through the air, it reduces down, and once you get below 10 psi, you're starting to, it's not very comfortable. You can start having breathing problems, and it is so thin that you will struggle.
But the greater the pressure of air that these pipes pump into the cabin, the stronger the fuselage needs to be. That would add weight to the aircraft. So there's a compromise. Planes usually fly with a pressure equivalent to between 6,000 and 8,000 feet, comparable to the world's highest cities. That means reduced oxygen, and is one of the reasons we often feel tired on a flight. Pressurizing the cabin can also cause metal fatigue, because as air is pumped in and out of the aircraft, its fuselage expands and contracts.
You can see all the dimples along the skin of the plane, which when it's pressurized up in the air, all gets smoothed out.
It's a pretty amazing bit of engineering, but this frequent flexing of the fuselage can cause cracks. It's one of the major reasons why Victor Xray is undergoing this intensive operation.
In order to thoroughly examine every inch of the airliner's internal shell, engineers have to remove almost every fixture and fitting inside the cabin. Some 747s can take over 500 passengers, but airlines can use tracks in the floor to choose their own seating plan. On Victor Xray, Mick Gregg and his team must strip out 299 seats. Mick, with the right Allen key to just sort of steal yourself a bit of extra leg room in flight? Would that, yeah.
No, it wouldn't. Not unless you got a hammer and a drift with you as well.
You'd never get past security, would you?
No, you wouldn't.
They are light. They're lighter than a settee, aren't they?
Yeah. There you go, Tom. Done.
Once removed, Victor Xray's seats are sent to the interiors workshop to be reupholstered and put through their paces by veteran seat tester Mark Jago.
So is it your job then to sit in this chair, watch a few films, play a few games, and then say, yeah, we're good?
Yes, it's a terrible job, but somebody's got to do it.
Back in the hangar, work continues in the cabin.
All these sidewalls are yet to come out. All the dados are on the bottom are all to come out.
300 floor panels must be removed.
All the centre trough area there gets reworked.
180 window protectors and blinds taken out. and 140 sidewall panels stripped off.
This is the skeleton of the plane here. This is the, behind here, that's the framework. Aluminium frame?
Yeah, it's all aluminium. Won't have steel. Steel's too heavy. You want your aircraft to be as light as possible, don't you?
And that installation is pretty vital, isn't it? 'Cause it's sort of minus 50 degrees outside there.
Yes, it is. I believe it's about minus 56 degrees and around 30 to 35,000 feet.
And that's enough to protect you from that minus 50 odd outside.
It's 2 days into the overhaul, and most of the first-class cabin fittings have been removed. The team can now begin the painstaking task of searching every inch of the internal frame for the smallest of defects.
And lo and behold, we found a little crack down in the corner, which we're going to put right, yeah. Your favourite seat, 1A?
1A is my favourite. Shift manager Paul Thomas has discovered a minor crack in one of Victor Xray's floor supports.
Which is right in the corner. You can see the telltale, and it runs right to the corner. They normally emanate from fastener holes, so a rivet, and then run out.
Or sharp edges, you know. Or...
Yeah, well, you can see the line when it's tracking. So, yeah, we pretty much got to replace that part now.
And you visually inspect the whole structure?
Absolutely. If we don't take that out now, that crack will just run and run and run and run and run. So we found it now. So the floorboards will come up. We'll de-rivet all this area.
Just for that? I mean, that...
Just for that small little crack.
Yeah.
Reassuring, yeah?
It is reassuring, but yeah, because I mean, my car is, you know, call that a crack. I'll show you cracks.
No laybys at 38,000 feet, I'm afraid.
There are no laybys in the sky. There are no laybys in the sky.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's day 4 of the overhaul, and work's beginning on Victor Xray's largest components, its wings.
Really, from wingtip to wingtip, we're looking at about 211 feet. So a huge wingspan.
That's about a football pitch, then?
About a football pitch, yeah.
Overseeing the work on the aluminium and carbon fibre wings is shift manager Chris Morgan. Obviously they're very sturdy, but there's quite a bit of movement, isn't there, in the actual...
Yeah, so I mean, if you can see this movement here now, you get a total displacement up and down is about 32 feet. That's because you don't want a wing to be rigid. They need to allow for turbulence, they need to allow for airflow.
How air flows around a wing is crucial to achieving flight, and yet, incredibly, even among experts there are different theories to answer the question, how does a plane fly? And most people have that question answered with Bernoulli's theory. And Bernoulli's theory suggests that air going over the top of the wing has to travel further than the air underneath. Because it's got to travel further, it speeds up. Because it speeds up, the air particles spread out and diffuse.
This results in lower pressure above the wing than the pressure beneath. That pressure difference literally pushes the plane into the air. But this doesn't explain why planes can fly with symmetrical wings. In fact, it's the angle of the wing and the amount of air it deflects down that matters. Because according to Newton's third law, the air force downwards results in an equal and opposite force upwards onto the underside of the wing. At the right speed and angle, this is enough to lift the plane into the air. In flight, Victor Xray's wings are subjected to enormous forces. Apprentice Lewis Robinson Hoare has been scouring the surface of this wing to find any damage that may have occurred.
We found some damage during inspections, which the damage is round there, where all that is pulled away from the structure below it.
OK, so the composite started to come apart.
Defect spotted. It can now be repaired. It turns out that Lewis's engineering passion runs in the blood.
3 generations of my family have worked so it's just run with the family, I suppose.
Yeah. And are they on shift with you sometimes?
No, my dad's on the opposite shift to me.
OK.
Which is OK. And my Bampy's retired now.
Yeah.
So, but he used to work in here as well.
Lewis's next job is on Victor Xray's flaps, vital components which increase the surface area of the wings, allowing aircraft to fly at slow speeds. The only way the crucial hydraulic and backup electrical control systems can be thoroughly checked is to remove the flaps. Lewis has to control this crane with absolute precision. The crane has been set to 0.9 of a ton, which is the exact weight of the flap they're removing. That's so when the last guy undoes the last bolt, the wing doesn't drop to the floor or fly to the ceiling.
Is she off? OK.
Slowly but surely, the flap is removed from the wing, with barely a millimetre of movement up or down.
Let it go. He's all yours now, all right?
Look at his face, he's loving it. During flight, air passes over these flaps and wings at hundreds of miles an hour. That causes friction and the build-up of static electricity. To deal with that, there are small attachments, known as static wicks.
If you could see it, how would that static look coming off here? Does it just sort of fizzle out?
Literally that. Visibility-wise, it's often very hard to see.
Yeah.
But you will still get sparking
really?
That will occur.
Slight sparking, right?
Yes. Sometimes in the high, electric storms and certainly in a lightning strike, we will get these like sacrificial. They will take a little bit of a battering.
On average, every aircraft is hit by lightning once a year. So how does a plane deal with this phenomenon? This laboratory at the University of Cardiff holds the answer, because this is one of the few places in the world where scientists, led by Phil Likauer, have the technology to make lightning of their own.
It might sound bad doing these lightning tests to planes and things, but absolutely everything on an aircraft has to be certified against all the threats it could be posed to it.
The state-of-the-art laboratory tests new materials as aircraft manufacturers look to find lighter, more cost-effective alternatives to the aluminium currently used. So why do planes get hit by lightning?
The aeroplane, since it's actually in the sky, it's a huge metal object, it induces the lightning strikes itself, because it's the only thing there.
So how do planes survive? To find out, we're going to test this aluminium model, similar to our own 747.
Let's blow it.
OK.
You might have the best job in the world.
Sometimes I think so. There's a lot of paperwork too, though.
Now, it's my chance to play God.
Basically, when I say fire, it's very easy. Just press fire. And fire. So as you see, the model aeroplane survived.
It did. It looks perfectly intact.
Everything and everyone inside a plane's protected by the aluminium fuselage, which is a good conductor. It allows the electricity to take the path of least resistance, along the fuselage and out again.
What would the passenger feel?
They might hear a loud thump, but that's about it. They shouldn't feel anything at all.
A graphic experiment illustrates the dangers of using a non-conducting material, in this case, plastic.
Fire.
Which is why all new material combinations are so extensively tested. Back at the hangar, work to strip back the 747 continues. Today, engineers are about to reveal one of the parts of the plane that the public never sees. The nose cone, or radome as it's known, shields the aircraft's weather radar, which needs to be checked for corrosion.
And it works on the radar principle, which is like a complicated echo. It fires out radio waves in a very, very fine focus. It fires a beam out and then listens to that beam coming back, which will bounce off any clouds or anything that's up ahead. And that information is fired out at different angles to allow a huge range of sight, which is fed back to the flight deck so the pilot can take whatever action he needs to take.
Victor Xray is now a week into its overhaul, and next, its most valuable components are about to be removed for closer examination.
It is a big moment indeed. They're actually taking the engine off the wing. These things cost about £8 million each. The last thing you want to have happen is it come crashing to the floor.
As experienced as he is, it's a nervous moment for team leader Scott Kroll.
Like, I started as an apprentice 10 years ago, and I've worked my way up to team leader. But I mean, even as a team leader now, the amount of knowledge and experience we need to learn is just incredible. And I think that's what keeps me going.
Generating over 60,000 pounds of thrust, an engine exerts enormous pressure on the mounts that hold them in place. It's crucial that engineers remove the engines so they can examine these fixtures for signs of wear.
The pylon is that big bracket, if you like, you can see, which connects the engine to the wing. The engine to the pylon itself has got 8 bolts.
8 bolts?
Yeah, so just 4 at the front and 4 at the back. And that's what the boys are undoing now. They're undoing the forward bed.
The 8 bolts are crucial in holding the engine in place, so each one will be sent to a laboratory and tested for weaknesses.
It is, yeah.
These all get sent away now, NDT'd, but we'll have a new set going back on.
NDT'd, non-destructively tested.
Nice. Maybe X-rays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultrasound.
Dark training, ultrasound, of course.
Maybe,
Looking inside, yeah.
For the drop, the 7-ton engine is supported in a sling attached to the crane.
It's an impressive operation to make sure this is all rigged up perfectly well, that nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
You'll just be pushing it. Is it? I mean, it's heavy to push, or once now it's suspended, it's quite free?
We're just supporting it. Obviously, we try not to. All the work is done by the crane. Yeah. All right, so we let that do it. OK, clear, come down.
It's all happening.
Take down.
Scott and his team slowly lower the engine, making sure that all of its pipes are disconnected.
To be honest, it seems like the tension is being transferred from the crane into the engineers here. You can see them all getting more and more focused as it slackens off.
Going down again.
I don't think even steel toe caps would withstand the force of one of these coming down.
Looking pretty good. We're almost there.
Yeah, it's in.
It's in.
Yeah, we're good.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap.
So at the end of the day, Scott, when you go home, you still got that job satisfaction with you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, every day I go home and I see my little girl and she says, Daddy, how did your day in work go today? And I say, honey, today Daddy fitted an engine. Not just any engine, and I'll be 211.
Oh, here we go. Full-on impression now.
Yeah.
When turning, the big fan at the front sucks in air, which is then compressed, mixed with a mist of fuel, and ignited in a combustion chamber. This produces a huge, continuous blast of energy in the form of hot gases. These are directed out of the back of the engine, producing some of the engine's thrust. The energy from the combustion is also used to spin the front fan faster, sucking more air in. This air is directed around the outside of the core and forced out of the rear, producing the rest of the engine's thrust.
The 24 precious titanium fan blades, which provide the lion's share of the aircraft's thrust, can now be removed and examined by Chris Thomas and his team for damage.
Is it heavy? Can I have a... I mean, it's not inconsiderable weight, but it's lighter than I thought it would be.
The titanium blades are hollow to save weight.
So what exactly are you looking for when you're doing those inspections?
OK, when I inspect the blade, I inspect the surface of the blade, the leading and trailing edge of the blade for any erosion damage, any chips or dents and corners missing, and any impact damage you can get on the surface of the blade.
Blades can be damaged by hail or bird strikes.
All the blades I've got on the blade root here. You can see all the markings on the blade roots.
Yeah.
Each blade is serialised, and they're put in a specific location to balance the hub.
So much like on a car wheel, say, when you've had something done with your car wheel, it needs to be balanced. So when it's going around a high speed, it's not causing a load of vibration. So if you've had to do some work on one blade, you might have to rebalance the whole thing, not just that blade.
That's right, yeah.
Wow.
Fully loaded, Victor Xray needs approximately 120,000 horsepower from its 4 engines to get into the air. That's similar to the power of 1,000 family cars pulling this plane off the ground.
It's just in through this hole here?
Just in through that hole there.
This one here?
That one there, yeah.
And generating that level of thrust is thirsty work.
Wow, this is pretty cramped.
I'm crawling up into the bowels of the 747 with engineer Phil Taylor. He will spend over 2 weeks looking for leaks inside the aircraft's labyrinth of fuel tanks.
So Phil, this It's the main tank here.
We're in the centre wing tank, which is situated between the two wing sections. Above you is the cabin area with the cabin seating.
Okay.
And you're in the forward mid-section of the aircraft, basically. It holds 65,000 litres.
65,000 litres?
Certainly.
And is that all in this bit here?
No, this is one compartment of 6 compartments going towards the rear of the aircraft.
But there's more than one tank on a plane?
There's 8 in all.
So how much fuel are you looking at there across all of it?
The fuel quantity for the whole aircraft is 216,000 litres.
Well, that is massive. I mean, your average size car is what? I don't know, 60 litres, something like that?
60 litres, so approximately 3,500 cars you could fill with one jumbo full of aviation fuel.
Victor Xray is now 2 weeks into its 5-week overhaul, and so far it's on schedule. Engineers have completed over 5,000 of the 12,000 jobs that need to be done before the 747 can be classified as airworthy again. In the cabin, the last remaining floor and wall panels need to be stripped, along with a toilet module.
No, I'm good to go, Mick.
Right, OK.
I've been roped in to help.
OK. Stinks, Mick.
Did tell you that.
Woo!
Oh.
Now, Mick, on a lot of old trains, I know that anything that was produced would just be dumped out onto the track. And from that, I think there's developed a sort of urban myth that suggests the same happens on planes. Has that ever been true?
No, it ends up in the aft freights, which is right down the back of there.
Right.
Got 4 tanks.
I last met Mick removing all the seats. And I wondered if working on aircraft for 19 years made him feel more or less comfortable about flying in one.
I love flying anyway, so I mean, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. Yeah. I've always loved flying. But the wife doesn't like flying at all.
Oh.
So, I mean, we'll go on holiday to Lanzarote or something like that, yeah. And we sit there and the flaps all go down, and I'm sort of there, I'll go...
grip in your hand.
That's the flaps going down. And she'll go, shut up, I don't want to know, I don't want to know.
Really?
Yeah.
In an industry where safety is paramount, even a toilet is a highly engineered piece of kit. As an electrical component that could cause a fire, it has to undergo stringent tests before it's passed fit to fly. The tests are carried out at the company's avionics facility outside Cardiff. Here, the hundreds of electronic gadgets used on a plane, from navigational aids and in-flight entertainment remotes to toilet flushing systems, are stripped, tested and calibrated by highly skilled engineers like Martin Jenkins.
So, what happens when you go to the toilet on an aeroplane, Martin?
Right, when you actually finish what you're doing, you press your little button which is on the side of the toilet in the cabin.
It is. There's a massive whooshing noise.
That, which is what we heard earlier on the actual rig. You get a spray of water from the top, and the vacuum gets created in the bowl and sucks it all away.
Above 16,000 feet, air pressure outside the plane is considerably lower than inside. By opening a small vent, the waste pipe and tank are brought to the same low pressure as outside, effectively creating a vacuum. This means that when a seal on the toilet bowl is opened, anything in the bowl is sucked away into the pipes and waste tanks.
When you're flying, Martin, when you go to the toilet in the air, you must have an ear now for what is the perfect flush.
That's a good point, actually, because sometimes you might get an actuator that is actually working, but not to the full capacity. And as you just said, you can pick it up as you're listening to it. When the actual flush cycle, you might not hear it, but I probably would, yeah. And the other guys that work it as well.
Although it might seem over the top, this level of testing's not without good reason. On a flight, electrical power's at a premium, so even the kettles are tested to make sure they don't use too much electricity and take it away from a more important system. Engineer Simon Orcock is currently checking that these kettles draw the correct current while taking the exact time to reach the precise temperature to make a perfect cup of tea.
We boil it at 83 Celsius plus or minus 2 Celsius.
The board of tea tasters have decided.
If you get a packet of say, PG tips or whatever, it never says boil a kettle.
It says hot but not boiling, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Even the kettles are over-tested.
Yeah.
When the 747 flew for the first time over 40 years ago, Many of these devices being tested here hadn't even been invented.
As technology has evolved, manually controlled cables and pulleys have been replaced by computer-controlled electronic signals transmitted by wires. Beneath Victor Xray's passenger compartment is the cargo bay, surrounded by the 172 miles of wiring that connect all the plane's complex systems.
Just looking around, there are miles and miles of wiring here.
Many of these cables flow from the pilot's controls to these vital computers, currently being examined by avionics engineer Nick Jordai.
The first 747s were designed back in the 60s.
Yeah.
I presume those wouldn't have had any of this?
No, the racks were built, but it had totally different boxes on. The boxes were much more primitive than they are now.
So how would what these boxes do now have been done back then?
Well, a lot of the functions done by these roles used to be done by the flight engineer.
That role's redundant because of these guys?
Done by them, yeah.
There's a thought. Machine taking over man's job.
It's now just 3 weeks until Victor Xray is due to fly again. As it's been stripped bare, I've been able to see how the aircraft's intricate flight controls work, delved inside its complex engines, and experienced the impressive mass of its landing gear as it was tested. But could the plane's computers I've just seen control all of these without a pilot?
I'm really interested to see if it could actually fly itself.
I'm heading down to London to see pilot Doug Brown, who flew Victor Xray to Cardiff. He's going to demonstrate a 747's autopilot in one of the airline's £8 million flight simulators.
Right, I'll just give you a chance to fly the airplane manually for a little while. As we're climbing away.
Progressing away.
And then what we'll do is we'll put the autopilot in, we'll bring it round, and we'll do an automatic approach and an auto land onto this runway.
Okay, so essentially there are 3 planes to be thinking about. One is pulling back to be able to lift off vertically. You've got the steering and the pedals to keep yourself down the runway on that plane. But then you've also got this horizontal level as well to keep control. What does this control?
All 4 of the engines. So engines 1 to 4, forward thrust on there, and you can see that the engines spool up.
Oh, here we go. It's actually
on there. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to put full power on. So now we're coming up towards the speed I'm going to ask you to pull back at.
Oh, really? Oh, there we go.
Rotate. So back on the control column. Don't turn the stick while you're rotating. Keep it in the middle. That's nice. A bit further, I'm going to select the landing gear up.
It's amazing. This is amazing.
Once up, it's a tight 360-degree turn so that we can simulate an automatic landing.
Can you see the airfield there?
I can, straight ahead, yes.
We're going to let the autopilot run through, and we'll go right through to an auto land.
Would autopilot be able to do that itself?
The aircraft will land itself if the pilot has set it up properly to do so.
Fine.
The autopilot is now controlling the 747's approach to the runway, altering the pitch and direction of the aircraft. It can also control the level of thrust. But the autopilot cannot extend the wing flaps, which slow the aircraft down, or deploy the crucial landing gear.
50. Now it's going in. You see it?
30.
Okay.
Only then can the 747 land itself, although the autopilot cannot apply the brakes.
So now you stick the reverse thrust on?
We do.
Okay. And that?
A little bit of brake. That's it.
Fantastic.
The 747 is a remarkably intelligent machine, but it still requires skilled pilots to fly it. And it's the high level of training which is one of the reasons why flying statistically remains so safe. Another reason is that the airline industry has learnt valuable lessons in rare accidents through an iconic component housed in the tail section of a plane.
Here they are, 2 black boxes. This on the right is the data recorder, records all the telemetry of the flight. And on the left is the voice recorder, which records all the pilots' voices.
The two black boxes are regularly tested at BA's avionics lab, where I met up with engineer John Davies.
This is a black box, but as you can see, it's not actually black, it's painted orange. And that's because it's clearly identified in any incident.
It's a big old tape recorder.
It is a big tape recorder. That's what basically it is. As you can see as well, the tape is actually surrounded by two thermal packs, which are chalk.
Spring-loaded as well?
Spring-loaded as well, yeah. With two thermal packs, which are chalk impregnated with water. So in the event of a fire, that water turns to steam, keeps then that tape at a steam temperature.
OK.
So it won't destroy the tape.
And what sort of temperature range is it specified to?
It should withstand 1,000 degrees C over a 30-minute period of time. That's where aviation fuel burns.
So the bit you're opening now, inside there, that is the precious cargo of...
This is the part they're interested in. It'll record the last 30 minutes of any flight.
It may look archaic, and new airliners have converted to digital, solid-state data storage, but tape still does the trick.
That could contain the most precious of information that will ultimately be fed back to make sure it never happens again.
Exactly, yes, which it has many times.
Yeah.
To comply with comprehensive safety legislation, all aircraft must work to strict maintenance schedules, including detailed tests every year and a complete overhaul every 6 years. At 14 years of age, Victor Xray could still have another 10 years of flying ahead of it, but there comes a time when a 747 is just too costly to keep maintaining. Then it's worth more as spare parts than a complete aircraft.
This is part of your flaps, part of the Kruger flaps.
Okay. Mark Gregory is the boss of Air Salvage International.
We're obviously the largest dismantling company in the UK, in fact in Europe.
At Cotswold Airport in Gloucestershire, Mark and his team salvage over 40 aircraft a year.
These here, can we have a closer look at these?
Can, yeah, they are 747 inboard landing gears removed from a 747-400. If it's done a huge amount of landings, then the value of that is kind of dropping. But I think this has done quite a lot of landings. But it's still, still not cheap.
Roughly how much then?
You're probably looking at about $300,000 for a set of landing gears like this.
On a 747, Mark will salvage up to 1,200 parts, which will eventually be sold to airlines around the world. Precision electronics means a second-hand coffee maker could fetch up to £3,000. Even a simple bowl for the toilet could sell for as much as £500.
These are the front screens off the 747. They've got very high value, and I would say probably about $30,000.
What, each?
For each screen, yeah. Because these ones here, obviously, they're heated. They're heated elements running through them. I think they're gold heating elements that go through them.
Well, OK, so in here now you've got... So that there's
They're
gold
very
running...
thick. They're really thick screens. They're laminated as well. You can just see the elements. See the elements in there.
Yeah, at the top, yeah.
A bit like your car heated front screen as well.
That hits home there. Yeah. The value of the whole industry now.
Yeah, it's massive, absolutely massive.
80% of the salvage value of an aircraft comes from its engines.
This is a 737 engine. This has probably got a resale value of about 1.2 million, I suppose.
Wow.
And going back, the bigger engines at the back, they're a little bit more.
Once all the valuable parts of the 747 have been removed, what's left of the aluminium shell will be tackled. And after almost 3 weeks, Victor Xray is now at a similar stage of its overhaul.
18 days ago, this plane was flying passengers around the world. And today, what it looks like inside is a far cry from what it would have been then.
In this skeletal state, there are signs of the 747's evolution.
We're right at the very front of the aircraft here, and above us is the flight deck. And just looking around, even in a plane as modern as the 747, it's surprising to see how much mechanical equipment there is, as well as obviously all the electronics.
Victor Xray still uses the Jumbo's original cable and pulley system to control some of the aircraft's most important functions, including the landing gear doors and the rudder.
And then finally, right at the back here, hopefully, yeah, you see the cables heading off through the cabin and off to the rudder. Keeping it mechanical, keeping it simple. Ah, the flight deck. Looks a lot different now without the seats and all the flight instruments.
The Cardiff team now have a tight deadline to turn Victor Xray back into a fully working plane. It's booked to go back into service in just over 2 weeks, on the same day the complex process is due to finish. But when a 747 has come to the end of its working life, like this one at Cotswold Airport, there's no turning back for Mark Gregory and his salvage team.
We've removed over 130 tonnes of equipment, and all we're left with is now 100 tonnes of aircraft, which has got very little value because the only value that's there is the metal.
At this point, the final part of the demolition process can begin.
So we'll take the tail off first, chew the tail up. And then we'll work forward. And the airboard of the wings into the fuselage. And then through the rest of the body then. It doesn't take very long. It's about 3 days to do a 747.
It really is all the guts and the veins and everything just being pulled out of the whole machine.
Look at that. Very soon, this 747 is nothing more than a heap of scrap metal.
So this is £200 million worth of plane reduced to probably the most expensive pile of scrap I've ever seen in my life.
Only a few recognisable fragments of the aircraft remain.
So this is a leading edge, and this is...
That's aluminium. Well, there you go, you can see it here.
Yeah.
It's thin, but pretty... I mean...
It takes some battery, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty durable.
Then as the wing moves back, it doesn't need to be as strong, so they make it out of this lightweight stuff.
There you go,
yeah. Engineering being led by nature, isn't it? Honeycomb.
Look at this, though. You can see the thickness. It's so thin. It's like that.
Some 747 flight decks are spared demolition to be used as the shell in the construction of flight simulators.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, this is a bit different.
It's like a relic, isn't it? Look at that.
This is proper kind of aviation history, how it all used to be. All these controls here is where flight engineer would have sat when you needed one. Obviously on Victor Xray, that's gone now.
The remaining carcass of a 747 like this still has a recycling value worth up to £35,000. And although it's no longer pure enough to be used again in aircraft construction, as recycled aluminium, it does get to live another day. Once they've separated out the aluminium, it'll be sent away, smelted down and recycled, meaning what was once a fuselage of a 747 could be your next fizzy drink.
Or even the frame of a bicycle.
We're on our way back to Cardiff, where Victor Xray should now have been given a new lease of life.
Last time.
Last time indeed.
It's heading out.
Tomorrow evening, it's due to head back into service.
There it is, Victor Xray. Completely different, it's all back in. It does smell new.
It does smell new.
Last time I was here, this was all completely open.
Yeah.
It's all on again, the screens are running, good.
Since arriving 5 weeks ago, engineers have replaced over 5,000 separate parts, including 11 brand new toilets. 386 square metres of new carpet has been fitted, along with 285 refurbished seats. And there are 14 brand new first-class seats for passengers paying upwards of £5,000 a flight for the luxury.
Wow. Oh, wow. Hey. Oh.
Oh. It's mad to think it does all this and it flies.
In just over 24 hours' time, these seats should be occupied by paying customers en route to South America. So now, for the first time in 5 weeks, Victor Xray is towed from the hangar for the final critical tests that need to be carried out to ensure all the parts of the aircraft, including its 4 engines, are working. For Hugh Gibbs, this is the only occasion when an engineer gets to power up a 747 for real.
So will we be moving anywhere when you put it up to almost maximum thrust?
No, we've got the brakes on, and we can't do more than one engine at full power at a time. We have to do them one at a time.
Really? So if you have all 4, we'd be taking off through the middle of Cardiff Airport?
Yeah. Request permission to carry out a high-power ground run. OK, going up on 1 and 4.
The sensation of being here right now is kind of what you get when you hit turbulence mid-flight, but yet we're here on the runway sat outside Cardiff Airport. It's just awesome, the power of these things. That was a brilliant, fun experience for me, Hugh, but from a technical perspective, how did it go?
All went well. We had no problems at all. Got the high power, it was lovely and smooth, and it passed all the tests that we needed to do, so.
And does running those engines up to throttle like that get any less exciting any time?
No, I've been doing it for about 5 years now. I still love it.
The following day, and on time, Victor Xray is ready to bid farewell to Cardiff. For the engineers, this is the moment when all the hard work pays off.
Quite rewarding, you know, job ownership, you know, especially if you've been on it from start to finish and you think, you look back, I've done that, works, and well, when you see it barreling down the runway as well, 140, 150 knots, you think, I did them bolts up.
You know, I've been in the industry of 20 years, and you'll never lose that pride and that feeling inside that, you know, you've been part of producing that product and keeping it safe. And obviously knowing that when the aircraft returns to Heathrow, the customer is then sitting on that aircraft and you know you've done your job well.
After 5 weeks, over 30,000 working hours, and 12,000 separate jobs, Victor Xray is ready once again to take to the skies. And for the engineering team, who have painstakingly stripped the aircraft down and built it back up again, there's the satisfaction of knowing it works.
James May has some things you need to know here on BBC HD this evening at 10. But first, we're driving one of the world's most dangerous roads. Next.